Hello YouTube, this is Morgan, Airspeed Prime here at my next Avatar news update video, and yeah, we've got a piece of news here that we've been waiting a little bit of time for, and that is that we have the cover and also the release date for Avatar The Last Airbender Smoke and Shadow Part 3, the final part of this, at least as far as we know now, the last Avatar The Last Airbender comic. So final part here. You can obviously see on screen right now the cover, and it's going to be up for the whole video basically. But yeah, in general, I really like this cover. I think it fits. You know, you've got Zuko at the front because fundamentally the book's focusing on him and his family, so it makes sense that he's at the front. You've got Aang there in the background, as well as one of the Kimura Kage, who are going to be the kind of villains of this whole book. And yeah, it's just a very nice image, you know, kind of darker than some of the other covers. Yeah, you know, again, you know, you sort of question, like, okay, why is Aang on the cover? Of course, he has to be involved. He's the Avatar. But based on what we know about this book, it seems kind of more fitting that a character like Mai or a character like Azula, who we'll talk about in a moment, would be on the cover. But again, they don't really like to spoil a lot of stuff on the covers for these books, so I can understand why they haven't really gone for an Azula on the cover. The release date, according to Amazon, is April 12th, 2016, but that is the Amazon date, which is the mass market release date, so that would put the comic book store release date as being March 30th. So that's a bit earlier than expected, actually. You know, obviously the other book comes out in part 2 comes out in December, so you know that makes sense. You know, 4 months. You know, the end of March. So yeah, March 30th, very end of March to complete this series makes sense. Isn't any delays, so that's pretty cool. And we also as well have a description for this book thanks to Amazon as well. Now, here we go. Finally, we get the reveal of Azula. So let's just read this. Children are disappearing in the Fire Nation capital. Avatar Aang and his friends are doing everything in their power to save them, but will it be enough? What's worse, when Azula, the mad sister of Fire Lord Zuko, appears on the scene, Zuko locks down the capital to catch her, igniting fears and riots in the streets. Will Zuko follow in his evil father's footsteps in order to save those he holds dear? Obviously written by Gene Yang, art by Team Gurihiru. So very interesting. Confirmation finally for sure that Azula is going to be in this series. That's very nice to hear. Really interesting though is that it seems that she's coming back in a more kind of chaotic manner than we maybe expected. That, at least based on this description, they don't quite seem to be going down the redemption road that we kind of expected. Of course, this is just a kind of really early solicitation type description, so it doesn't really tell us her full involvement. But either Zuko's kind of overreacting to Azula, or she does come back in a pretty kind of crazy way. And then the big thing that I noted reading this the first time was, will Zuko follow in his evil father's footsteps in order to save those he holds dear? So, like, what exactly does that mean? Will he do something like Ozai to save the people around him? So are they suggesting something that, like, would Zuko hurt a member of his family like Ozai did to him to save the rest of his family? Obviously Ozai did it for different reasons, but is that what they're trying to hint at here? That Zuko may be put in a situation where he's maybe thinking that the only way to deal with Azula is to kind of end her, kill her? I'm not really sure, so they seem to be setting up something like that whenever Azula makes her appearance in the book, it's going to be in such a way where, as much as he wants to kind of fix things with her whatever way she's acting is not going to allow that, and he thinks that the only way to save, I assume what would happen is maybe she's going to try and take out Ursa or something like that. Maybe she tries to hurt Noran or Ki, maybe. Maybe Azula's been the one who's been kidnapping the kids, you know. Is that something that they'll deal with? And is that why Zuko would be so to the point where he would do something that would make him seem like Ozai? So, you know, that definitely puts questions in your head, because a lot of people, including myself, have kind of felt like Zuko's kind of gotten past most of the issues in terms of making the right decisions. So the last thing left is Azula and how he deals with her. So I'm very interested to see what they do with this. I can see them going down the road just based on his appearances in Korra that he actually did something that awful. So I assume this will be resolved in some other sort of a way. I really think they have to do something, maybe not a full redemption, but something more emotional rather than just chaotic with Azula to resolve her arc. But obviously there's a long time away until Smoke and Shadow Part 3 and 2. We don't even have 1 yet. But thankfully, Part 1 isn't that far off. We're at this stage under 2 months away from that. But it still is a really far time away. So, thankfully it's nearly over. But it's been tough waiting for this book to come out. It's been the longest delay between Avatar comics so far. And the wait is getting pretty tough at this stage. But the only other thing I want to say is just that because right now this is the last Avatar comic that we know of, we don't know really what's happening with Avatar comics post Smoke and Shadow Part 3. Of course, Smoke and Shadow is going to get a hardcover collection, and we're going to be waiting for that cover in the near future. But what we don't know is, like, are the core comics replacing the Avatar comics in terms of, like, is the core comics taking the slot that the next Avatar series would have taken up? Or is it just that they're at a stage where they're still working on Smoke and Shadow and they haven't announced what's happening next? Because the notable thing is, of course, that there's no artist on board for the core comics just yet, and they're in super early stages of production. Mike is writing them, which means that Gene Yang isn't writing them. So that whole creative team right now is free. The ATLA comic creative team is free. So I would assume that the comics are still continuing, because they sort of hinted at it at the SDCC panel. They kind of made some like weird answers to the question where, like, yeah, we're going to keep doing them, but we only want to do Avatar stories if they make sense to be told. So I don't really know, but either way, big announcements coming. Whether they do announce a new Avatar The Last Airbender comic, or they just announce more information in the core comics, it's good to know that we still do have stuff coming out in the future. But that's basically all I wanted to talk about here. I always love talking about comic news. I find the comics very interesting overall. In many ways, I find the comics more interesting in other ways than like the show, because it allows them to tell these stories that maybe Nickelodeon wouldn't quite allow or want to be told. And there's just some really interesting stuff that they do in the comics. I always enjoy reading them. Just those 72 pages whenever they come out is always so fun. But that's been the Avatar news video for today. In the comments, let me know your thoughts on the Smoke and Shadow cover, the description, Azula confirmed to be in the book at some point, and especially that line about Zuko potentially following in his father's footsteps, having to make some big decision that may make him come across as evil. Definitely want to know your guys' thoughts on that. But other than that, that has been the news video. Thanks for listening, and bye.